Get that screaming brat out of first class now! Rebecca Miller's hand shot forward and slapped the baby carrier from Sarah Johnson's grip. The force sent 6-month-old Emma tumbling sideways into the aisle. Sarah lunged forward, catching her daughter inches from the floor. Emma's terrified screams filled the cabin. Sarah's diaper bag exploded across the polished walkway. Other passengers gasped and immediately started recording. Rebecca stepped on a baby bottle, crushing it under her heel. The plastic cracked loudly. "People like you don't belong here," she hissed, towering over the kneeling mother. Sarah wore simple dark clothing that gave no hint of her true status. Her phone buzzed repeatedly from an unknown caller. She ignored it, cradling Emma protectively. Passengers whispered behind raised phones. The recording lights blinked red. Have you ever been judged so completely wrong that the truth would shock everyone watching? These real-life stories reveal how black stories often hide the most powerful truths. The first-class cabin fell silent except for Emma's fading whimpers. Sarah slowly stood, her daughter pressed against her chest. Around them, 12 passengers held up phones like digital witnesses to something they'd never seen before. Rebecca's supervisor badge glinted as she crossed her arms. "Ma'am, I need to see proof you paid for that seat." "I have my boarding pass right here." Sarah's voice stayed level, controlled. "No, I mean real proof. Credit card, bank statement, something that shows you actually bought this ticket." Rebecca's eyes narrowed. "We get a lot of people trying to sneak into first class." A middle-aged white businessman in 3A lowered his newspaper. An elderly woman in 2C clutched her pearls. Nobody else was being asked for additional documentation. The discrimination hung in the air like smoke. Sarah reached into her leather portfolio and produced her boarding pass. Rebecca barely glanced at it before handing it back with a dismissive wave. "This could be fake. Anyone can print these now." Rebecca turned to address the other passengers as if Sarah wasn't there. "Sorry, folks. We're dealing with a situation. Should have this resolved shortly." In the back corner, Jennifer Brown from 4F had already started her Instagram live stream. The viewer count climbed. 23, 67, 145. Comments flooded the screen. Is this really happening? That poor baby. What airline is this? Someone help her. Jennifer whispered into her phone. Y'all, I cannot believe what I'm seeing right now. This flight attendant is literally harassing this black mom and her baby for no reason. Rebecca remained oblivious to the growing digital audience. She stepped closer to Sarah, invading her personal space. Look, I don't know how you got this ticket, but families with crying babies belong in the back. That's just how it works. According to which policy? Sarah asked quietly. According to common sense. Other passengers paid good money for a peaceful flight. Rebecca gestured broadly at the cabin. You're disrupting everyone. The businessman in 3A cleared his throat. Actually, I don't mind at all. Babies cry sometimes. Rebecca shot him a look that could freeze water. Sir, I'm handling this. Sarah's phone buzzed again. The screen lit up with board meeting, 15 minutes notification. She declined the call and slipped the phone back into her portfolio. The leather folder bore an embossed logo, but Rebecca was too focused on her power trip to notice. Senior Manager David Thompson emerged from the cockpit area, summoned by Rebecca's dramatic hand signals. His confident stride suggested he was used to handling difficult passengers. What seems to be the problem here? Thompson's tone immediately sided with his employee. This woman is causing a disturbance with her baby. She's disrupting first-class service. Rebecca spoke as if Sarah wasn't standing right there. Thompson looked Sarah up and down, his judgment swift and obvious. Ma'am, if you can't control your child, we'll need to move you to a more appropriate section. My daughter was crying because your employee physically grabbed her carrier. Sarah's response carried no anger, just facts. That's not what I saw. Rebecca lied smoothly. Jennifer's live stream count hit 847 viewers. She angled her phone to capture Thompson's face. The comments section exploded with outrage and demands for justice. Thompson pulled out his radio. "This is Manager Thompson requesting security to Gate B7. We have an uncooperative passenger in first class." The businessman in 3A stood up. "Excuse me, but I've been watching this whole thing. That baby wasn't bothering anyone until your employee grabbed her." "Sir, please return to your seat," Thompson commanded. "This is discrimination, plain and simple," the businessman continued. "I fly 200,000 miles a year, and I've never seen anything like this." Thompson ignored him and focused back on Sarah. "Ma'am, I'm going to need to see your identification and credit card used for purchase." Sarah reached into her portfolio again. As she did, several documents became visible. Official letterheads, financial reports, meeting agendas. Thompson glimpsed the papers but didn't process their significance. Meanwhile, Captain Williams appeared at the cockpit door. His weathered face took in the scene with growing concern. 26 years of flying had taught him to recognize trouble, and this situation screamed lawsuit. Rebecca noticed his presence and played up her victim role. "Captain, this passenger has been verbally aggressive and refuses to comply with safety regulations." Captain Williams studied Sarah carefully. Something about her calm demeanor in the face of such treatment struck him as unusual. Most passengers would be shouting by now, threatening legal action, demanding supervisors. This woman stood quietly, taking notes in her leather portfolio like she was conducting research. "What specific safety regulation is being violated?" Captain Williams asked. Rebecca faltered. "Well, the baby was crying loudly during boarding." "Babies cry, Rebecca. That's not a safety violation." Thompson stepped forward to support his employee. "Captain, we need to maintain order in first class. Other passengers are complaining." "I haven't heard any complaints," Captain Williams replied, scanning the cabin. Several passengers shook their heads, confirming his observation. Sarah's phone buzzed again. This time, the screen showed multiple missed calls from David, CEO, and urgent email notifications. She silenced the device without answering. The live stream viewer count climbed past 2,000. Jennifer whispered updates to her audience while other passengers started their own recordings. The situation was rapidly becoming a viral moment, but Rebecca and Thompson remained focused on their target. "Ma'am, security is on the way," Thompson announced with satisfaction. "If you don't voluntarily relocate, they'll escort you off the aircraft." Sarah finally looked up from her notes. Her eyes met Thompson's with steady confidence that should have warned him he was making a terrible mistake. "I understand," she said simply. "Should I call my husband to let him know about the delay?" "You can call whoever you want from the gate," Rebecca smirked. Sarah pulled out her phone and scrolled to her contacts. The screen briefly showed dozens of corporate numbers, board member names, and executive assistants. She selected David and prepared to dial. Around them, passengers leaned forward in anticipation. The digital audience held its breath. Captain Williams stepped closer, his instincts screaming that something significant was about to happen. Emma had stopped crying entirely, as if sensing the importance of the moment. The cabin fell into expectant silence, broken only by the quiet hum of the aircraft's systems and the soft buzz of recording phones. Sarah's finger hovered over the call button. The power dynamic was about to shift in ways that Rebecca and Thompson couldn't possibly imagine. 2 airport security guards appeared at the aircraft door, their heavy boots echoing through the jet bridge. Officer Anderson led the way, his hand resting casually on his radio. Behind him, Officer Martinez carried a clipboard and wore the expression of someone who'd seen this drama 100 times before. "What's the situation?" Anderson asked, his eyes immediately focusing on Sarah while ignoring the dozen other passengers. Thompson pointed dramatically. "Disruptive passenger, refusing to follow crew instructions. We need her removed." Anderson approached Sarah without asking for context or hearing her side. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to gather your belongings and come with us." "What am I being accused of?" Sarah's voice remained steady. "Failure to comply with crew instructions," Anderson recited. "Please collect your items." Jennifer's live stream exploded past 15,000 viewers. The comment section moved too fast to read individual messages, but the outrage was universal. She whispered urgently into her phone, "Security just arrived. They're about to arrest this innocent mom and baby." Other passengers started recording more openly. The businessman in 3A held his phone high. The elderly woman in 2C fumbled with her device, muttering about documenting this travesty. Even passengers from economy class crowded the aisle boundary, drawn by the commotion. Sarah began organizing Emma's scattered belongings. As she knelt, her portfolio fell open, revealing official documents with corporate letterheads. Anderson glimpsed the papers, but was too focused on his authority to process what he was seeing. "She hasn't done anything wrong," the businessman protested. "I've been watching this whole thing. Your employee started this." "Sir, step back or you'll be removed as well," Anderson warned. Rebecca sensed victory approaching. She was being verbally aggressive and disturbing other passengers with that crying baby. "The baby wasn't bothering anyone," an elderly passenger called out from economy class. "Ma'am, return to your seat," Martinez ordered. Captain Williams stepped forward. "Officers, with respect, I haven't witnessed any aggressive behavior from this passenger." Thompson shot the captain a warning look. "Captain, let security handle this." Sarah's phone rang again. The screen displayed David, CEO, with increasing urgency. She declined the call and noticed 17 missed messages from various board members and executives. Her email showed 23 unread urgent notifications. The live stream count hit 28,000 viewers. Other social media platforms started picking up the story. Number sign. First-class discrimination began trending locally. News outlets received tips from viewers demanding coverage. Rebecca pulled Anderson aside, speaking in hushed tones. "I think she might be trafficking that baby. She doesn't have proper documentation proving it's hers." Anderson's expression hardened. Child trafficking was serious business. "Ma'am, I need to see identification for both you and the child." Sarah reached into her portfolio, passed the corporate documents, and produced her driver's license and Emma's birth certificate. Both documents clearly showed matching last names and Sarah's address. Anderson studied the papers, but Rebecca wasn't finished. "Those could be forged. She's probably not even supposed to be in first class. I bet she's using stolen credit cards." "Ma'am, I need to see the credit card you used to purchase this ticket," Anderson demanded. "Why?" Sarah asked calmly. Suspicion of fraud. The accusation hung in the air like poison. Around them, passengers gasped and murmured. The live stream audience erupted in digital fury. Jennifer narrated the escalation in real time. Sarah pulled out her wallet. Her credit cards were visible briefly, several black cards that suggested significant wealth. She handed over an American Express Centurion card, the kind most people never see in person. Anderson examined the heavy metal card. The name matched her ID perfectly. His confidence wavered slightly, but Rebecca pushed forward. She could have stolen that too. Rich people are always getting their cards stolen. Thompson nodded sagely. "We see it all the time. Identity theft is rampant." Captain Williams studied Sarah more carefully. Something about her composure under this level of harassment struck him as extraordinary. Most innocent passengers would be screaming, demanding lawyers, threatening lawsuits. This woman took notes like she was conducting an investigation. "Officers," Sarah said quietly, "I've complied with every request. I've shown identification, birth certificates, and credit cards. What specific crime am I suspected of?" Anderson hesitated. When listed out like that, the requests did seem excessive. Rebecca sensed his uncertainty and escalated again. She was making threats earlier. Said she was going to make us pay for asking her to move. That's completely false, the businessman interjected. I've been recording this entire interaction. She never made any threats. Sir, put your phone away, Anderson ordered. This is America. I have the right to record public officials, the businessman replied. Martinez stepped toward him menacingly. Not on an aircraft, you don't. The tension escalated beyond passenger versus crew. Now it was citizens versus authority, documented truth versus official lies. The aircraft cabin became a pressure cooker of injustice. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from David. Emergency board meeting moved up. Where are you? Investors are waiting. She silenced the phone and continued organizing Emma's belongings. Her calm demeanor in the face of mounting accusations began to unnerve even Thompson. Ma'am, we're going to need you to come with us now, Anderson announced. You can sort this out at the security office. What about the baby? Sarah asked. Social services will need to verify custody, Rebecca suggested with false concern. The suggestion that Emma might be taken away sparked outrage among the passengers. Several people stood up simultaneously. The elderly woman in 2C started crying. The businessman demanded to speak to supervisors. Captain Williams had seen enough. Officers, I need to speak with you privately. They huddled near the cockpit door while Sarah continued packing. The conversation was hushed but animated. Captain Williams gestured towards Sarah several times, his expression growing more concerned. Jennifer's live stream reached 47,000 viewers. Major news outlets began reaching out to her directly through the platform. The story was exploding beyond social media into mainstream coverage. When the huddle broke, Anderson approached Sarah with slightly less confidence. Ma'am, we still need you to come with us, but we can expedite the process. I understand, Sarah replied. She tucked her portfolio under her arm and lifted Emma's carrier. Should I call my husband to inform him of this delay? You can make calls from the security office, Martinez said. Sarah nodded and pulled out her phone. The contact list was visible briefly as she scrolled dozens of corporate executives, board members, and government officials. She selected David and prepared to dial. Rebecca smirked with satisfaction. Thompson crossed his arms confidently. Anderson and Martinez flanked Sarah like she was a dangerous criminal. Around them, 50 passengers recorded every moment. The digital audience waited in anticipation. Captain Williams watched with growing dread. Sarah's finger hovered over the call button. The aircraft cabin held its breath. Emma gurgled softly, the only innocent sound in a space filled with injustice, lies, and impending revelation. The power dynamic was balanced on a knife's edge, about to tip in a direction none of the authority figures could imagine. The phone call that would change everything was one touch away. Sarah ended the call and opened her portfolio to a fresh page of notes. Around her, the cabin buzzed with whispered conversations and the soft clicks of phone cameras. Rebecca and Thompson stood frozen like deer in headlights. Now, Sarah said, her voice carrying new authority, let's discuss the immediate situation. She pulled out a tablet and began displaying data with the precision of someone who lived in boardrooms. Rebecca, according to our Q3 customer service reports, we've received 847 discrimination complaints this year. 73% remain unresolved. The numbers hit like artillery shells. Thompson's face went pale. Our diversity and inclusion metrics show a 34% increase in bias-related incidents over the past 18 months, Sarah continued. This represents a $47 million revenue loss due to boycotts and negative publicity. Captain Williams stepped closer, recognizing that he was witnessing something unprecedented in aviation history, an executive conducting real-time corporate accountability at 30,000 feet. Legal exposure is currently at $87 million across 23 pending federal lawsuits. Sarah's voice remained calm as she delivered devastating statistics. Our insurance premiums have increased 28% specifically due to discrimination claims. Rebecca found her voice. Mrs. Johnson, I didn't know. What you didn't know, Sarah interrupted, is that today's assessment was specifically designed to evaluate our discrimination response protocols. You just provided a masterclass in how not to handle such situations. She turned to her tablet and pulled up regulatory information. Federal Aviation Regulation 250.3 prohibits air carriers from discriminating against passengers. Violation penalties start at $37,500 per incident. Thompson tried to interject. Ma'am, perhaps we could discuss this privately. Privately? Sarah's eyebrow raised slightly. You mean like how you privately humiliated me in front of 50 passengers and 78,000 live stream viewers? Jennifer held up her phone, confirming the count had climbed even higher. Sarah continued her corporate briefing with ruthless efficiency. Title VI of the Civil Rights Act allows unlimited damages for discrimination. Our legal department calculates potential exposure at $50 million for today's incident alone. She displayed another screen. FAA has authority to revoke operating certificates for patterns of discriminatory behavior. We're currently under investigation for 3 similar incidents this quarter. The weight of regulatory scrutiny crashed down on everyone involved. Anderson and Martinez had quietly retreated toward the exit, realizing their careers were likely over. Stock implications are significant, Sarah noted, switching to financial data. Our shares dropped 15% after the last viral discrimination incident. Today's event is already trending on social media. She showed them her phone screen. Flight discrimination had exploded across platforms. News outlets were picking up the story. Their corporate communications team would be in crisis mode within hours. Rebecca, Sarah addressed her directly, you have 2 options. Option 1, immediate resignation with public apology, agreement to complete bias training, and a commitment to never work in customer service again. Rebecca's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Option 2, termination with cause, personal lawsuit for civil rights violations, industry blacklist, and criminal referral for assault on a minor. The choice wasn't really a choice at all. Mr. Thompson, Sarah continued, similar options apply to you. Additionally, your failure to de-escalate this situation violates your management training certification. Thompson's 8-year career with the airline flashed before his eyes. Mrs. Johnson, please, I have a family. So do I, Sarah replied pointedly, adjusting Emma in her arms. Yet that didn't prevent you from threatening to separate me from my child. She pulled up corporate policy on her tablet. Section 15.7 requires managers to intervene when witnessing discrimination. Section 23.2 mandates immediate supervisor notification for bias incidents. You violated both. Captain Williams stepped forward. Mrs. Johnson, I should have intervened sooner. I take full responsibility for allowing this to escalate. Sarah studied him carefully. Captain Williams, you expressed concern and asked appropriate questions. However, your intervention could have been more decisive. She made notes on her tablet. I'm recommending additional leadership training and bias recognition certification, but you kept your professional composure under pressure. The distinction between accountability and punishment became clear. Sarah wasn't seeking revenge. She was conducting systematic corporate correction. Officers Anderson and Martinez, she addressed the security guards who were trying to become invisible near the door, you responded to a situation without gathering facts. You made assumptions based on racial profiling. Anderson's radio crackled with dispatch calls, but he didn't dare respond while being dressed down by an airline executive. Airport security will receive copies of today's footage along with formal complaints. Your supervisors will determine appropriate consequences. Sarah returned to her tablet and pulled up implementation timelines. Effective immediately, several policy changes will be enacted. First, mandatory bias training for all customer-facing employees within 30 days. Thompson tried to take notes, but his hands were shaking too badly to write. Second, implementation of our flight-safe reporting app, allowing passengers to document discrimination in real time. Reports will trigger immediate supervisor response within 5 minutes. The technology solution impressed even the passengers who were still recording. Several business travelers nodded approvingly. Third, body cameras for all security personnel and customer service supervisors. Footage will be reviewed weekly by independent oversight committees. Sarah's systematic approach to preventing future incidents demonstrated why she held an executive position. This wasn't emotional reaction. It was strategic corporate reform. Fourth, financial accountability measures. Department budgets will be reduced by $10,000 for each sustained discrimination complaint. Bonuses will be tied to inclusion metrics. The money angle would ensure lasting behavioral change. Nothing motivated corporate employees like compensation consequences. Rebecca, Sarah concluded, you have 60 seconds to choose your option. Thompson, you have the same time frame. The deadline created urgency that prevented prolonged negotiations or excuses. Rebecca's voice barely whispered, Option 1. I choose Option 1. Thompson nodded frantically. Same, Option 1. Excellent, Sarah said, making final notes. Legal will contact you within 24 hours with resignation agreements and training schedules. She closed her tablet and returned it to her portfolio. Captain Williams, please proceed with departure. We've delayed these passengers long enough. Yes, ma'am, he replied, retreating quickly to the cockpit. As the aircraft began its pushback sequence, Sarah settled into her seat with Emma. Around them, passengers slowly returned to their normal activities, though many continued recording and posting updates. The corporate showdown was complete. Justice had been served not through violence or emotional outbursts, but through systematic accountability, precise data, and corporate consequences that would create lasting change. Rebecca gathered her belongings with shaking hands. Thompson stared at the floor in defeat. The security guards disappeared into the jet bridge like vapor. Sarah opened a book and began reading to Emma as if nothing unusual had happened. But the ripple effects of this flight would transform airline policies industry-wide. 3 weeks after Flight 447, Sarah stood in the airline's executive boardroom presenting her assessment findings to 12 board members. The mahogany table reflected the glow of multiple screens, displaying implementation progress. The FlightSafe app launched Monday with 47,000 downloads in 72 hours, Sarah reported, clicking to her next slide. Average response time to discrimination reports has dropped from 45 minutes to 4.2 minutes. Board member Elizabeth Davis raised her hand. What's passenger feedback been like? Overwhelmingly positive. Our customer satisfaction scores increased 23% in markets where the pilot program launched. Sarah displayed real-time data. More importantly, discrimination complaints decreased 67% system-wide. The room buzzed with quiet approval. Effective corporate reform that also improved profitability was rare. Personnel changes are complete, Sarah continued. Rebecca Miller submitted her resignation effective immediately. She's enrolled in comprehensive bias training through the National Civil Rights Institute. She clicked to the next slide showing staffing updates. David Thompson was reassigned to our training department where he'll develop discrimination prevention curricula. His first assignment is creating modules based on Flight 447 footage. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Thompson would spend months studying his own failures to help others avoid similar mistakes. Captain Williams completed advanced leadership certification and scored 98% on bias recognition testing. He's been promoted to our pilot training advisory board. Sarah displayed before and after metrics that painted a clear picture of systemic transformation. Company-wide bias training reached 100% completion 2 days ahead of schedule. Employee feedback scores average 4.7 out of 5. What about legal exposure? Asked board member Robert Anderson, always focused on liability. resolved favorably. The viral footage actually strengthened our position by demonstrating immediate accountability and systematic reform. Sarah switched to legal metrics. Pending discrimination lawsuits dropped from 23 to 7. Insurance premiums decreased 12% based on our proactive measures. She pulled up financial data that made everyone lean forward. Stock price recovered fully within 10 days and hit a 6-month high last Tuesday. Investors view our transparency and rapid response as competitive advantages. The transformation extended beyond their airline. Sarah clicked to industry-wide impacts. 12 major carriers adopted similar reporting systems. The International Air Transport Association requested our training materials for global implementation. Board member Patricia Williams smiled. So Flight 447 became a case study in effective crisis management? More than that, Sarah replied. It became proof that doing the right thing creates sustainable business value. She displayed passenger testimonials flooding social media, stories of improved experiences, respectful treatment, and restored faith in air travel. The 447 incident had sparked industry-wide soul-searching. Technology implementation exceeded projections, Sarah continued. Body cameras for customer service supervisors reduced complaints by 81%. Footage review identified 12 potential bias incidents that were addressed through coaching rather than escalation. The prevention-focused approach impressed the board. Early intervention saved money and protected passengers. Our oversight committee includes community representatives from the NAACP, ADL, and local civil rights organizations. They review weekly footage samples and provide quarterly recommendations. External accountability ensured lasting change rather than temporary public relations gestures. Sarah clicked to her final implementation slide. The Emma Johnson Scholarship Program launched last week with $2 million in funding for underrepresented students pursuing aviation careers. Named after her daughter, the program would create long-term diversity in the industry. Today's discrimination victims could become tomorrow's industry leaders. Financial accountability measures are functioning as designed, Sarah reported. 3 departments lost budget allocations totaling $47,000 for sustained complaints. Employee bonus structures now weight inclusion metrics at 25% of total compensation. Money motivated behavioral change more effectively than training alone. The compensation structure aligned personal interests with corporate values. Board member Charles Brown raised his hand. What about the passenger who live-streamed everything? Jennifer Brown, I think? Sarah smiled. Jennifer became our social media advocate without any prompting. She posts positive updates about her flights and highlights improved customer service. Her follower count increased from 3,000 to 78,000. Organic advocacy was more valuable than paid advertising. Jennifer's authentic voice carried credibility that corporate communications never could. The business case for inclusion is now proven with data, Sarah concluded. Revenue increased $23 million this quarter. Customer retention improved 18%. Employee satisfaction scores hit 5-year highs. She displayed the final slide showing industry recognition. We received the Corporate Equality Excellence Award from the National Urban League. The Department of Transportation cited us as a model for discrimination prevention. External validation confirmed that their reforms represented genuine progress rather than superficial changes. Questions? Sarah asked, closing her presentation. Board member Davis spoke first. This transformation happened remarkably quickly. What ensures it sustains long-term? Cultural change through systematic accountability, Sarah replied. Every policy includes measurement, monitoring, and consequences. We've made inclusion a business necessity, not just a moral imperative. Board member Anderson nodded approvingly. The financial results speak for themselves. Discrimination is expensive. Prevention is profitable. Exactly, Sarah agreed. We've proven that treating people with dignity creates shareholder value. It's good business and the right thing to do. Board Chairman Michael Taylor stood to close the meeting. Sarah, Your leadership during and after Flight 447 exemplifies corporate responsibility at its finest. You've transformed a crisis into competitive advantage. As board members filed out discussing implementation timelines and budget allocations, Sarah remained behind to review next quarter's objectives. The work was far from finished. Her phone buzzed with a text from David. "How did the presentation go?" "Successfully," she replied. "Board-approved expansion to international routes." "Proud of you," came his response. "Emma and I are making dinner. See you tonight." Sarah packed her materials and headed home to her family. 3 weeks ago, she'd been subjected to humiliating discrimination while holding her daughter. Today, she'd presented evidence of systematic change that would protect thousands of future passengers. The transformation proved that quiet strength, strategic thinking, and persistent accountability could defeat prejudice more effectively than anger or revenge. Corporate responsibility wasn't just possible, it was profitable. Flight 447 had become a masterclass in turning crisis into lasting reform. The lesson would echo through the aviation industry for years to come. 6 months later, Sarah Johnson stood at the podium of the National Civil Rights Convention, addressing 3,000 attendees about corporate accountability and systematic change. Behind her, a massive screen displayed the Flight 447 footage that had transformed an industry. "That day, I wasn't trying to make a statement," Sarah began. "I was simply traveling with my daughter. But sometimes the most powerful moments happen when we're just being ourselves." The audience leaned forward, captivated by her calm delivery. Many had seen the viral video, but hearing directly from the woman who'd faced such discrimination carried deeper impact. "The lesson wasn't about who I am or what position I hold. It was about how we treat each other when we think nobody important is watching." Sarah clicked to statistics showing industry-wide policy changes. Real transformation happens through systematic accountability, not viral moments. In the months since Flight 447, 12 major airlines had implemented similar discrimination prevention programs. The ripple effects extended far beyond aviation into hospitality, retail, and healthcare sectors. "Emma is now 1 year old," Sarah continued, displaying a photo of her daughter taking first steps. "She'll grow up in a world where that kind of treatment is less likely because people like you demanded better." The audience erupted in sustained applause. Sarah's ability to transform personal trauma into societal progress inspired activists across multiple movements. Rebecca Miller completed her bias training and now works as a diversity consultant, Sarah revealed. She speaks at corporate workshops about unconscious prejudice and the importance of treating every customer with dignity. The redemption story surprised many attendees. Rather than destroying lives, Sarah had created opportunities for growth and education. David Thompson developed training modules used by 847 companies nationwide. His experience managing discrimination poorly became expertise in preventing it entirely. Transformation, not punishment, had proven more effective at creating lasting change. The FlightSafe app has documented 12,000 positive interactions and prevented 89 potential discrimination incidents through early intervention, Sarah reported. Prevention works better than punishment. She clicked to testimonials from passengers, employees, and industry leaders praising the systematic approach to inclusion. "But technology alone doesn't change hearts," Sarah emphasized. "Cultural transformation requires constant commitment from leadership, employees, and customers who refuse to accept discrimination as normal." The speech concluded with a call to action that would echo long after the convention ended. Flight 447 proved that ordinary moments can create extraordinary change when people document injustice and demand accountability, Sarah said. "Each of you has the power to transform discrimination into reform." She gestured toward the audience with genuine warmth. "Share your stories. Document unfair treatment. Demand systematic solutions, not just apologies. Hold corporations accountable through persistent pressure and economic consequences." The standing ovation lasted 4 minutes. Later that evening, Sarah sat in her hotel room video calling David and Emma. On the nightstand, her phone displayed social media metrics from the day's speech. 2.3 million views across platforms, 847,000 shares, and thousands of comments sharing similar experiences. "How was the speech?" David asked, Emma babbling in the background. "Powerful," Sarah replied. The audience understood that individual courage can create systemic change when combined with strategic accountability. She scrolled through responses on her phone. Stories poured in from people who'd faced discrimination in restaurants, stores, hospitals, and workplaces. Each story carried the same theme: the need for documentation, persistence, and systematic reform. "The movement is growing beyond aviation," Sarah observed. "People are applying Flight 447 principles across industries." Number Sarah Johnson. Standard had become shorthand for expecting dignity in customer service. Number document and demand encouraged recording discrimination for accountability. Number sign systemic, not symbolic, pushed for policy changes over empty gestures. "Emma's legacy is taking shape," David noted, watching their daughter play with blocks. "She'll never remember that flight, but thousands of children will benefit from the changes it created." Sarah smiled, remembering the terrified baby who'd become an unwitting catalyst for transformation. Sometimes the most important revolutions start with protecting the people we love. 3 days later, back in her corporate office, Sarah reviewed quarterly discrimination reports showing continued improvement across all metrics. The Flight 447 model was working, but vigilance remained essential. Her assistant knocked and entered with urgent news. "Mrs. Johnson, we just received a request from the European Union. They want to implement our discrimination prevention protocols across all member airlines. Global expansion of their reforms would protect millions of additional passengers. The impact was scaling beyond anything Sarah had imagined while sitting in that first-class cabin 6 months ago. Draft a response accepting their request," Sarah instructed. "Include implementation timelines and training requirements." As evening approached, Sarah gathered her materials and prepared to leave the office. On her desk sat a framed photo from Flight 447, Emma sleeping peacefully in her arms while chaos erupted around them. The image reminded her that protection and dignity should never be revolutionary concepts. Her phone buzzed with a notification. Jennifer Brown, the passenger who'd live-streamed the original incident, had posted an update about her recent flight experience. "Flew the same route today. Flight attendant couldn't have been more professional and welcoming. ChangeWorks #Flight 447 Legacy." The post had 23,000 likes and hundreds of comments sharing similar positive experiences. Real change was measurable, sustainable, and spreading. Sarah closed her office and headed home to her family. In the parking garage, she noticed a young black mother struggling with luggage and a fussy toddler. Without hesitation, Sarah approached and offered assistance. "Thank you so much," the woman said gratefully. "Flying with kids is exhausting." "It gets easier," Sarah replied, helping load the car. "And companies are getting better at supporting families who travel." The woman didn't recognize her, but that was perfect. The goal had never been personal recognition. It was systematic change that protected everyone. These touching stories happen daily across America. Real-life stories like Sarah's prove that Black stories and life stories matter when we demand accountability from those in power. What discrimination have you witnessed in your travels, shopping, or daily life? Share your experiences in the comments below. Document unfair treatment. Demand systematic solutions, not just apologies. If you've seen corporate accountability create positive change, tell us about it. If you've experienced discrimination that was properly addressed, share that story too. Progress happens when we celebrate improvement while remaining vigilant against backsliding. Subscribe for more stories of quiet courage creating extraordinary change. Hit the notification bell to never miss when ordinary people transform injustice into systematic reform. Share this video with anyone who's faced discrimination or works in customer service. Start conversations about dignity, documentation, and demanding better from the companies we support. Together, we can ensure that stories like Flight 447 become unnecessary because treating everyone with respect becomes the universal standard. What would you have done in Sarah's situation? How do you document and respond to discrimination? Let's continue this important conversation in the comments. This touching story joins countless other real-life stories proving that Black stories deserve platforms, amplification, and the systematic change they inspire.